I grew up in Tywardreath, on the edge of clay country in mid-Cornwall. It's called clay country because of the rich deposits of china clay or kaolin that are found here. Over the last 250 years, the area has undergone enormous change due to the industry that has flourished around the extraction of china clay. The result of these upheavals is most obvious in the man-made mountain range of sky tips, dubbed the Cornish Alps by some. The working area of the china clay industry now covers 25 square miles of what used to be the moorland of mid-Cornwall. What are the cultural consequences of transforming a landscape on this scale? Landscapes are not just physical backdrops. A terrain shapes the practices, culture, and identity of the people who live there. Ways of being grow from the ground up. Cornish folklore is woven inextricably around the landscape. Coastal communities swap stories of mermaids living beneath the sea. Down tin mines, knockers toil away. And on the moors, where the wayfarer runs the risk of being pisky-led, looming granite tors are created by giants. Some of the earliest human interventions in Cornwall's landscape are ancient sites such as stone circles and burial places. These potent sources of traditional folklore hold layers of meaning and mystery. Their physical presence creates a direct connection to the people of the past, weaving cultural history into the natural environment and provoking a sense of wonder and perhaps even magic. In clay country, a large number of ancient sites have been lost completely, as the land has been dug out into pits or swallowed under waste tips. Stone circles, menhirs, barrows, and prehistoric settlements have been destroyed, as well as many more recent settlements, houses, chapels, and even entire villages, each place judged less valuable than the growth of the industry. In an oral storytelling tradition, it's easy for things to disappear without a trace. With the loss of a site, the stories and cultural treasures bound up with it are also lost. Meanings tied to landscape markers, whether natural or man-made, are erased from the landscape and replaced with one new story, the clay industry. Through the 19th and 20th centuries, a distinctive clay worker identity developed, and a hoard of stories and cultural treasures flourished along with it. But with mechanisation and decreasing production, fewer and fewer people are working the pits today. This identity and the culture around it is becoming rarer. People's lives in clay country are now largely removed from both the clay industry and what came before it. I'm interested in the cultural meanings that may have been lost as the landscape of clay country has been transformed. But we shouldn't see this only as a negative story. Culture develops in relation to surroundings, and a changing landscape means a changing set of identities, stories, and meanings. The destructive force of the industry can also be creative, feeding into the new living traditions of the area. Rumoured development proposals to flatten the great Treverban sky tip provoked protests from the local people. Standing out on the skyline, and often with a Cornish flag flying from its peak, the tip has become a symbol of local identity. Just because features like this are a product of recent change, it doesn't mean they can't hold significance in people's lives. To celebrate clay country, we need to understand the nuanced and complicated stories that define it. So, what meanings will the landscape of clay country hold in the future? With the industry in retreat, the relationship between people and landscape is shifting once again. How can we invest in a renewed sense of place in the clay country, one that creates meaningful connections with the landscape, recognising both its pre-industrial past and more recent history? We can do this in a number of ways. by passing on the history and knowledge of the industry.
So you could just break into it with the dubber.
And of local folklore and culture.
With this idea of snail creek procession.
By creating music, and art.
Different colours with the reduction.
By supporting local communities.
A facility for all three villages in the area, sometimes resting places and park.
And by protecting our coasts, green spaces and wildlife.
It's really important to protect the landscape here. It's quite vulnerable.
In these and other ways, we can reaffirm our connection to the landscape, creating new stories, as well as awakening the old. Mar tesin cowsel chwath gen handavas hay, a il ag an tir, ma cloan ni.
It's the middle of summer in 1913, down in the clay country. We've got breakers with dubbers on shillings just 18. Down in the clay country, my bonny boys. Down in the clay country. We want a union who'll pay us 2 times within a month. Down in the clay country. And an hour from 12 to sit down and have our lunch. Down in the clay country, my bonny boys. Down in the clay country. With the industry booming, there's money held in gold. Down in the clay country. But there's no money to pay us, that's what we're being told. Down in the clay country, my bonny boys.